Hello, I'm Jerome Adams.
And I'm Jate Brown.
Today we are talking with local Congressman Rodney Davis as we break down recent events in Congress for us to all understand them.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
The government just went through a partial shutdown. Can you explain to us students, what that means?
Well, what it meant, Jate, was that the federal government, for about a little less than 20% of the government operations, still was working, but 20% of the government shut down. It's still something that I wasn't in favor of. I voted 4 times to avoid this government shutdown, and then voted numerous times during the shutdown to actually ensure that government was funded again. But politics came into play a little more than what I even expected as a new member of Congress.
Were you in favor of the partial shutdown?
No, I was not in favor of the partial shutdown, which is why I voted 4 times to ensure that we didn't get to the partial shutdown process where open air monuments were closed to our nation's veterans. It just seemed odd to me that we had more people at the World War II Memorial guarding its closure than they have there during the day when it's open. It showed me that this shutdown was more about politics instead of people.
What did it accomplish?
It really didn't accomplish much other than the fact that we now had to pass a law to get Republicans and Democrats to sit down and talk and come up with solutions to our nation's financial future. It's sad. It's really sad that a law had to be passed to actually tell people to sit down and talk. That's why America's upset with Washington. That's why I'm upset with Washington. We ought to be able to work together and come up with some common sense solutions.
As a freshman congressman, how do you make your one vote have influence among more than 400 in the U.S. House of Representatives?
Well, you know, I take what I learned here in Decatur, Illinois, as a student at Millikan University a little over 20 years ago, and then what I learned growing up and still living in my hometown of Taylorville. No matter how big the number of people are that you want to be able to influence, you've got to be able to want to go talk to people to actually have an effect and make some positive changes. And that's why it seems so odd to me in Washington that we now have to pass laws to get people to talk to each other. That shouldn't happen. This shutdown was the fault of both parties, and I think the president right now has to show some leadership and stop saying he's not going to negotiate, but he needs to come to the table and actually talk, because governing is going to take both parties working together to actually move this country forward in a positive direction.
Is it at all frustrating to you that you don't have as much influence as you might like or as you might feel that you deserve in your district?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously we all go to Congress wanting to accomplish everything that we campaigned on. But it's just like in any particular arena. You've got to work with now 534 other members of Congress to make sure they know that your idea is a good idea. I was the first freshman member of Congress this year to actually have a bill signed into law, signed by the president. So it shows that when you actually put your mind to getting something done, you can take good old Central Illinois values into Washington and make things happen.
Can you explain what it is meant by debt ceiling in terms we can understand?
Sure. The debt ceiling is something that takes place because Washington spends more than it takes in. It's like if you were setting up your budget to run your household. If you know you're going to make a certain amount of income, and then you decide to get a credit card with $10,000 more dollars, and you spend that whole $10,000, you've reached your debt ceiling. You don't have any more money to spend. So how do you pay your bills? You pay your bills by cutting your spending, making more money, or adding more debt, adding another credit card. And that's exactly what America's been doing. Generations of leaders in this country have made decisions over the last 40 years that are affecting the way that you and your generation is going to have to react. You now owe $17 trillion in debt for people and decisions that were made long before I got there. And that's why it's time to stop. We have to make some tough decisions in Washington, and these tough decisions are going to be made under the view of making sure that your generation's not saddled with the bad decisions of the future or of the past like we are now.
You recently took a role with the Agriculture Committee. What will this mean to the district?
Well, it means that Decatur, Illinois and Central Illinois has a seat at the table when finalizing a farm bill, which is going to set our ag policy for the next 5 years. Honored to be the only freshman member on the Republican side to sit on that conference committee, and it's an honor for me to represent so many tremendous ag interests right here in Central Illinois.
With unemployment in parts of your district topping 12%, and the AG department responsible for food stamps, do you see this program as essential?
Well, the SNAP program, which is the food stamp program, is part of the Farm Bill. It is essential. But what we need to do is make sure we find a way to stop the SNAP program from growing at the same time where the president tells us that the economy is growing. Because if the economy is growing, those who need SNAP benefits, food stamp benefits, should be going down. What's changed? Well, what has changed is that during this administration, there have been waivers offered to the old Bill Clinton era welfare to work program. I don't think it's too much to ask able-bodied adults with no dependent children who aren't enrolled in school to be able to come in and provide some community service, volunteer service, or actually work to get those benefits. I think that worked in the 90s. It's worked up until this administration, and I think it'll work again in the future.
Some Tea Party members do not feel the education department is important to the government. Do you agree?
Well, I just recently supported a bill that would combine a lot of the Department of Education programs into one grant program, because I think all areas of bureaucracy out in Washington, those big concrete buildings with a lot of people that sit in those buildings and come up with ideas that they think will work here in Middle America, they may not. So I want to make sure that those who utilize the Department of Education, like the schools here in Decatur, have the ability to go in and ensure that the Department of Education is a lot more flexible than it is today.
Why do you feel that way?
Why do I feel that way? It's because right now in K through 12 education, Jate, the federal government spends about 5% of the money. The rest of the money is through the state or through your local property taxes. That's about 95%. But about 95% of the rules and regulations that your school has to follow come from the federal government. So I say they ought to invest more in the K through 12 education, or they ought to make sure that your school doesn't have to abide by rules that cost more. And that's why I want to bring the same common sense approach to our K through 12 education when it comes to the federal investment.
Illinois has adopted the National Common Core Standards. Does this take some of the power of education away from the local level?
I think it does. I voted for a bill, the same bill that I just talked to Jate about, that actually would have gotten rid of Common Core, because I think the decisions how best to educate our children from kindergarten through 12th grade we should rely on our parents, our teachers, our school boards, our superintendents, those that actually know the district the most. They know what jobs are available and what to make sure that we get our kids best able to sit in a learning environment and actually do what we sent them to school to do, which is learn. And I think local officials have a better ability to make that happen in a positive direction in the future, more so than some bureaucrat sitting in a concrete building in Washington, D.C.
Does this violate what you think is meant to happen in the United States of America?
Well, I think so, because I'm always one for more local control. America is the greatest country in the history of the world. I mean, this is a country that we take for granted. All the things that we have access to. And part of the reason why America is great is because we give the states so much authority and local government so much authority to do what they know is best in their state and their local municipality. Federal government should be there to protect this country. Federal government should be there to provide the essential services that we now provide. And to go beyond that, I think, is a disservice to many local educators.
Unemployment remains a major problem in your district, especially in the Decatur area. What can you, as in Congress, do to make a difference for those hunting jobs?
Well, what we need to do is streamline our workforce investment programs. There are hundreds of jobs available here in Decatur, and there are thousands of people out of work that can't get those jobs because they're not trained in the skill set that those jobs require. We need to make it easier for individuals who are unemployed to go back to school and not have to worry about losing their unemployment benefits. That's why I've introduced a bill to change the way that unemployment is viewed when it comes to going back to school and getting an education and getting trained for the jobs that are available. It amazed me when I once found out that someone who was laid off from a job would have to choose between their unemployment benefits or going back to get the training they need to fill a job that was open. It doesn't make sense to me, and that's why Washington needs to work to change it.
Most recent figures show nearly 3 out of 4 people between ages 18 and 24 not in post-secondary education is not employed full-time. What long-term impact will that have on our country?
Well, I think it's going to have a long-term impact because we need to ensure that the jobs that are available and that need to be filled, many skilled jobs, get the students into the education and training programs that are going to get them employed. If we decide, if many young people decide they don't want to go on to post-secondary education, we have to have the opportunities, like many here at Richland Community College, to train them for the good-paying jobs that are going to be available here in Central Illinois. And we need to find better ways to go out and recruit them and let them know what's available and what their potential really is.
Is the middle class disappearing in the United States?
I don't think it is. I think that the middle class, we need to have a resurgence of focusing on what it means to actually take personal responsibility, to have economic freedom. And I want to make sure that every single American has the ability to fulfill their American dream. And my parents grew up in a lower middle class area of Des Moines, Iowa, because my dad decided to work his way through a fast food restaurant after flipping burgers and shucking French fries. He was able, after working his way up, to move my family to Illinois, where my family achieved the American dream. I want everybody to have that opportunity to understand that America is the greatest place that they could ever live. And we in the federal government need to ensure that we get government out of the way of them and everyone who wants to create jobs and help everyone become employed here in Central Illinois.
Finally, as Veterans Day approaches, what would you say it means to be an American?
Well, Jerome, that's a great question. To me, being an American means that anyone can take advantage of the opportunities this great country has to offer. A small town kid from Taylorville, Illinois gets a chance to graduate from Millikan University and eventually follow Abraham Lincoln in the halls of Congress. That small town kid's me. I've been told many times in my life that you shouldn't dream that big. You shouldn't go for this. You're not going to win. And the message that I want to send to every young person here in Central Illinois and throughout this country is that don't listen to the naysayers. Believe in yourself. Work hard, play by the rules, get your education, and you too can be a member of Congress or achieve any dream that you decide to achieve.
Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I'd just like to say thank you, Jate, and thank you, Jerome, for having me on today.
Thank you for being with us.
We've been talking with Congressman Rodney Davis, and I'm Jerome Adams.
And I'm Jate Brown reporting.